Hi, this is Stacia, and we're going to take a look at my final game of the World Open Women's Championship. So I was sitting in a nice place in the tournament with a 3 out of 4 score, and one more win would put me at 4 out of 5 and probably in the money. But this game I faced a higher rated opponent, rated 1934, Amya Vidyarthi, and I was rated 1678. So let's look at this game and see how I do. C4, the English. E5 is the King's English. Knight to C3, and Bishop to B4. So this is called the Kramnik-Shirov counterattack. And after G3, I take the knight. Now I've had some people comment that this looks like a beginner move. I kind of agree, but guess what? This is the main line. And there is an idea behind this. So we're doubling white's pawns. Okay, she takes this way. And although we give up the 2 bishops pretty readily, our pawn structure is not yet determined. And we can put all our pawns on dark squares and make our light square bishop very happy. So that's kind of the idea. And then we're going to play against one of these weak pawns. So knight to c6, bishop g2, putting the bishop on the long diagonal, and I played b6. Now in hindsight, I think this one's kind of like, it's kind of living on the edge, playing b6. It's a little too weakening. I think in hindsight I would play d6 instead, but I played b6. And I put my bishop on the long diagonal. Now, the problem with this is my position's kind of loose. My bishop's undefended as of now. But the reason I play this way is because with the b pawn over here, I have the a5 square for the knight, which actually attacks this pawn, which is often weak, and defends the bishop. So I play this way because of that resource. Knight to f3, yeah, and white, even though this looks like an innocent move, white's actually threatening knight takes pawn, knight takes bishop takes bishop. So I have to defend my pawn. So I played d6. This does undefend the knight once, so like you have to keep an eye on stuff like queen a4. But I think after queen a4, I can actually go knight e7. So I was planning this. Next I would castle. But she castled, so knight e7 anyway, defending my knight, and d4. And I'm not sure about this way of her playing. She played d3 and then d4. I don't want to take this pawn. That just gives white nice pawns and takes away the double pawns. But okay, d4. I went f6, defending my pawn. I always tell my students never play f6, and then I play it every game. So if you play this way, you just have to be very mindful of checks on this diagonal and checks on this diagonal, which I do because I'm a King's Gambit player. So I'm kind of used to it. All right, so e3. I castled. So yeah, now I played f6, so I got to be mindful of this diagonal. Bishop a3, knight to a5. Okay, so I think my opponent could have put a lot more pressure on me by playing e4 earlier, maybe play d4 in one move. So she kind of let me off the hook a little bit. And now the bishop on a3, I'm not sure that's a good move either. The bishop, not sure what the bishop's doing there. It's blocking the a pawn and it's undefended. My knight just came to a5, opening up my bishop on the g2 bishop. And I'm also attacking c4. So here I was feeling pretty comfortable. My opponent played knight to d2. This does defend the pawn, but now I get to take the bishop. The reason that's good is because that bishop was very strong. Look at how, sorry, I'm having trouble drawing my long arrows. That diagonal is incredibly good for the bishop, but also white had the bishop pair and now they don't. So this constitutes a nice victory for black to get that bishop. And now the light squares are weaker, so I put my queen on d7 on a light square. Queen to e2, defending the c-pawn, and queen to a4. So this is my idea. I'm attacking the bishop and the weak pawn at the same time. She has to move her bishop. And it just feels like black has counterplay in this position. So I was feeling like I was probably slightly better. Computer actually says minus 1.6. Now I played king h1, a sensible move. Just get off that diagonal. It's almost like playing king b1. Okay, and now it's time for our plans. I'm not sure why she played this move, to be honest. I think she wanted to defend the knight and maybe bring the queen to the king side. That's my guess. Rook a to b8. I was thinking about a b5 break. That would attack the pawn again. And then she moved her rook again. So I have to admit, I was having trouble believing that my opponent was 1900 strength. But maybe her strength isn't the opening in the middle game, but maybe later. Okay, so I invaded with the queen. This looks like a natural move to bring in an unwanted visitor. Pins the knight and kind of puts pressure on the position. Also, if you play this way, you should make sure that your queen's not going to get trapped. But I did see that, you know, I have this square available and I have this diagonal. So I felt pretty confident that I wouldn't get trapped. Whoops, that move was not played. Okay. So she wants to trade queens. I might be able to, but I don't think I should. Yeah, this is still fine. But I think, you know, I think queen d3 is more exact. So this attacks the pawn again. And maybe she was considering queen a4 defending the pawn, but now that would drop the knight. So she played a4. Yeah, I'm not sure what she should play. Maybe c5 would be okay. Doesn't look right though either, does it? That opens my rook up a bit. But at least here, I was going to say it messes up my pawns, but maybe I could play this way. Check. Yeah, so I feel like black's just better. So queen d3, a4, and now that pawn is hanging, so I took it. That's reasonable, right? She took back. And now I need to take the knight. And she played here. So it's the final tournament game and I'm up a pawn. So I was feeling pretty good. a5 I played. e4. Rook to the center. I don't feel like the b5 break is necessary anymore. f4. Takes. Okay. And now the game begins. Now I'm up a pawn, but I do feel that white's position is interesting. So white has this strong center, and white's rooks are ready to come to the center. Though two big problems with the white position. Well, three problems. One problem for them is that they're down a pawn. That we know. Another problem is this bishop. I'm not sure what that bishop is doing because it's not doing anything. And number three is the king. The king is a bit weak. When you take with your f pawn, that's one of your pawns that helps your king out. So I suppose the king's going to hide on h1, but this diagonal, this a8 to h1 diagonal, doesn't look so safe for the white king. So I think black's better here, and the computer says black's way better. Hard to see during the game. But how do we continue? How do we continue? So I think black has to find some good moves now to continue correctly. And if black fails at that, the advantage will slip away. And I thought for a while here, and I didn't find a good move. I played rook f to e8. I think this move is unnecessary because the rook is possibly good on f8. We could probably play f5 and start picking away at the center, and if we take, it opens the file. And so I think the rook's just fine here in hindsight, but I played here. Kind of mechanical move. This allows white a free move, so she put her king on h1. Fair enough. And now again, I think black needs to be precise. So if you want to pause your video, I'd like to ask you, what would you play here with the black pieces? Okay, so I'll accept two answers here. The first one is probably the natural move, which I didn't play, and that's the move f5. So I think we should just attack the center, and if white takes, we get to take with our knight, improving our knight. And with this knight getting near the king, I think white's going to have problems. So they shouldn't do that. White could try this move, but I even think taking now is good. White cannot take this way because of the pin. And if they go here, I think we can just improve our knight now. Now the move I really wanted to play instead of f5 was the move knight g6. But I calculated the move f5 and I was kind of scared about this. If I go knight h4, notice my retreating square is gone, so I thought maybe my knight would get trapped. Like queen here. And how do I save my knight? But guess what? I didn't calculate very well because I could save my knight like this. Rook takes e4. So knight g6 actually does work. And if you can believe it, the computer is actually saying it's forced mate in 12 in this position. So it turns out that knight g6 is a move, and it's the best move. Not only that, but check this out. Computer showed me this. After f5, we can actually play a piece sacrifice. We can play rook takes e4, allow the knight to be captured, and now the problem is the king. We have rook e2. This is a tempo move on the queen, but there's more than that. With the e-pawn gone, now that diagonal I mentioned earlier is open. So now we have a checkmating net. If the queen moves away, let's say here, we can check. And this intersection square on g2 is going to be checkmate. So that would be amazing. So it turns out that, I forget which strong player said it, but somebody said, if you really want to play a move, then sometimes you should play it. But what they really mean is you should look more closely at it and see if you can make it work farther down the line. And here it would work. So I have this option. I think that's pretty incredible. And I also will not get trapped on h4. Okay, but I should have played f5 at the very least. That one looks safe. But I played this, knight to g8. Oh. Oh. I'm not happy about this move. Like, even if my knight goes to h6, like, is that a good square? I don't think so. I thought my knight would come here. I thought I was... But this is the old Stacia, d4 Stacia, making long-term plans that are a little bit too slow. Because guess what? White has plans too. Like, bring the rooks to the center, improve the bishop, improve the queen. Maybe double on the G file or the E file. So if I play slowly, white is going to play good moves too. So I need to do better than that. So knight G8, bad move. So here comes the rook. I decided to double. I think F5 is also an option though. Doubling's okay, a little bit mechanical. Okay, and queen f3. Now I think my opponent's idea was defend this pawn and play bishop to a3. I think that's what this is about. Improve the bishop, makes sense. And I played queen f7. Okay, so I must have been scared or confused or in a bad mood because I'm playing very passively every move. Now, again, if you want to pause your video and find the correct move, go ahead and do so now. Okay. Computer says G6 is okay. I'm not buying that. You shouldn't play G6. Opening up the diagonal. Knight H6 is a move, so if you said Knight H6, that's okay. But I think the best move here is Queen to C6. I really like this move. Okay, this attacks the pawn again. The pawn's pinned to the queen. And if white plays this move, which I saw, I did not see the retaliation. Queen back to C4. And then we say, haha, your pawn's attacked. So, yeah, so now white has to play E5. But I don't think that white wants to play this. We can take with the F pawn. And let's see. If they take, I think we can just take with the rook. And now this pawn's under attack. So if they do this, again, the pawn's still under attack. Maybe after rook d1, you could argue this rook is passive now. And I like this position for black. I could play this position. We still have our extra pawn. The knight's coming in. And our pieces are very active. The king is weak. I think black's probably a lot better here, I would say. And the computer says winning. So queen c6. But I played queen f7, allowing bishop a3. And now white is going to use their center. You know, I didn't do anything to stop them. With the bishop pinning my pawn, it makes e5 even stronger. I can't take back with a pawn anymore. So, yeah, I don't know. So I decided to attack the pawn this way. But, I mean, if white couldn't improve their position, this plan would be fine. But this is too slow. e5 happens now. Takes. I cannot take with the d pawn. c5 blocking the bishop. But c5 is good because it blocks the bishop. But it also undefends the d pawn. And now rook to g1. Queen f7 I think is a mistake. I think I have to play this way. This looks a little nerve-wracking. Like, maybe this will be played soon. White has to play here first. But that is the correct move, because otherwise I drop my pawn. So I gave my pawn back. Not recommended. But again, the computer says black is better here. So I've made so many wrong moves, but my position was good enough that I could still save it if I just find a good move. But here I played rook d7, giving up more of my advantage. I wanted to double up and win the pawn. Makes sense. But the computer says rook e2 is best. Play actively. Like, this rook is an unwanted visitor. We have this square covered, so she cannot push. Also good is rook e3, stay doubled and attack the pawn. But I played the most passive move, rook d7. Okay, the pawn came here, and this was the idea, try to gang up on the pawn. But yeah, now I'm in real trouble. Attack the rook, but here. Okay, I saw this move, but this is becoming worrisome. g7's under attack. Okay, I move the queen away. The rook is still defending. And I really want to take that pawn. So I do. But guess what? That bad bishop, I failed. I failed at my task of keeping that bishop bad. And now the computer says position is, it surprisingly says it's slightly better for black. But honestly, I think it's probably easier to play as white at this point. And I would call the position equalish. Queen f8, because I love playing passive, I guess. Rook here, or queen here, attacking my pawn. And finally I found a good move. So I have to do something active. I just have to. And knight e4 does that. Now this move looks risky because it opens up the bishop's attack on the g7 square, but I had an idea. White takes, as they should. Looks scary. I have to throw in the move knight f2 check. Now that king doesn't have any squares, so he has to step in front of the rook. So that's interference. Now I can take, bishop takes, queen takes check, and king takes knight. So the nice thing about this is that was a pretty forced line, and at the end of it, the pressure on my g7 pawn is gone. Oh, of course, my g7 pawn's also gone. And here I thought, now I have checks and an initiative. The problem is I have two checks and I choose the wrong one. Queen d5 check. Looks good. My queen gets out of the way. It coordinates with the rook until you see the move queen e3. Yeah, and get a nice look at that move. Queen e3, blocking the check. If I trade queens, this ending looks terrible. My king can't move. White has a passed pawn. I do not like that ending. And if I don't trade queens, then it's hard to know what to do. I played this in the game, checking the king. King comes to f3, and guess what? Black is better now. The problem is from e3, the queen has this move. That would be checkmate. So I don't really have time to do any attacks. So I had to play this move. And had I found this one move, I probably would have won the game. This looks so simple too. Always look at all your checks. So despite all my blunders, which there were a lot of them, had I found rook d2 check, simple move to find, I still would have won the game. But I think at this point I was so shook up that I wasn't even thinking clearly anymore. Chess can be like that. Yeah, so I'll show you the end. My king can't move, that's the problem. Yeah, so they trade off queen and I got checkmated. So let's review the most important part of the game. I do feel this is very instructive. Okay, let's get back to here. It all started right here. So in this position, black's better if black finds the correct moves. But I played passive every move, lost my advantage, got shook up psychologically, and lost the game. So don't let that happen to you. In positions like this, make sure you find the right continuations. So here, knight g6 is an amazing move, and f5 also good. Instead, I played this. Bad move, passive. I doubled my rooks. That's okay. I won't be too hard on myself. But again, queen f7, passive. I should go queen c6, encouraging this, and then queen c4. Instead of that, here, and that allows bishop a3. And now white's getting play. My pawn is pinned. This is happening. Another slow plan. White breaks in the center. c5 is correct. And now I have to find queen e6. Just maintain defense of the pawn. And another moment. Look at this moment as well. It's tempting to go rook d7, go behind the passed pawn, and we have enough material to win it back. But again, this is more active, and had I calculated this more, maybe I would have seen the strength of this move. This pawn is not going to queen. Okay, finally I find a good move. Knight e4 actually saves the day. But then we come to this position where after all of those mess ups, I still had one last chance to win the game with rook d2 check, and instead quickly played here. So this is a very sad loss for me, but I'm also kind of happy about it because I think it really highlights the weak part of my game, and that's when I have an advantage. I'm not good at finding the moves to keep the advantage or execute and turn it into a win. So that will be a focus of mine moving forward. I hope you enjoyed the game, and I'll see you next time. All right, bye.